The last exercise for this lesson is called the organic perspective boxes. It's similar to the rotated boxes, except you don't have neighboring forms, so you just kind of have to wing it and try and rotate boxes arbitrarily in 3D space. You start off by drawing a line that kind of flows through space. So you want to think about this point of the line is closer to the viewer, and then it kind of goes back and around until it's further away. There's a lot of wobbling there. So this is closer, then it goes further away, and so on. And the reason that I want you to draw this line is because it kind of governs the flow of a lot of different boxes that you're drawing through space. So you'll start off with maybe small ones here, and I want you to be aware of the size differences that you're constructing, because when you have a lot of little forms like this, you want to, the brain kind of automatically assumes that they're the same size. So when you have very big boxes, it's not that the box itself is big. The brain interprets it as this box is very close to me, or if it's small, it's very far away. So you got a box there, and maybe you've got another. And of course, you'd be applying the ghosting method here, just like everywhere else. I'm not, because I don't have the time to do that on this video. So it's kind of a do as I say, not as I do kind of deal. So just like I mentioned with the rotated boxes, this exercise is meant to be difficult. It's not an easy thing to just arbitrarily rotate these forms in your head. The point of it is to start developing a mental model of 3D space in your brain. And gradually, as that develops, you'll find your intuitive sense of space will kind of become easier to use. So I'll do this one on purpose. So you'll notice that sometimes you end up in situations where your far plane, so let's say this is the near plane, and this is the far plane, meaning it's farther away from the viewer. This one, the far plane, is not meant to be bigger than the near plane. Like if you actually drew through the box, you'd see that this one is way larger than this one. That is technically incorrect, but you will run into those mistakes somewhat as you do this exercise, and that's completely normal. Of course, you want to strive towards not doing it, but the fact that it happens is no big shame. Another thing that I do want you to play with is having boxes that overlap. Because overlapping gives you a stronger sense of depth, that this object is in front of this other object. And also I want you to exaggerate scale as things get closer to the viewer. The last thing that I want to mention is that I don't want you to have foreshortening, that is the rate at which your parallel lines converge with one another, to be too dramatic. I don't want it to be too fast, because that tends to imply a very large scale. Like if you're looking up at a very tall building, let's say you're looking up at something like this. Across this two-dimensional distance here, you are getting a great deal of convergence, meaning the vanishing point is quite close, like up there maybe. This tells us that the scale of the object that you're looking at is probably very large. The vanishing point is close, therefore the distance that is infinity is so close that this object must be huge. Conversely, if it was just very minute, that tells us that this is actually, the foreshortening is limited. The vanishing point is probably somewhere like up here. And so it's a much more manageable and relatable size. So with these boxes, because we are showing so much depth through the size of the individual boxes and how we can tell that there is a great deal of space because these faraway boxes are very tiny and the close-up boxes are very large, we don't want to have the same kind of convergence because that'll throw our sense of scale way off. We want to keep our foreshortening rather shallow. Shallow meaning that the vanishing points are farther away, that the convergence is more limited. So this allows us to keep things more cohesive. If we have a lot of weird scale issues with like very large boxes far away and then smaller boxes close up, or boxes that feel like they're big in scale farther away, that throws things off, and it makes the viewer feel like something is wrong, but they can't quite put their finger on it. And so that's basically the gist of this exercise. It's just a bunch of free-floating boxes in space. They're not aligned to each other or anything, but they are following this kind of path, moving from farther away where they're smaller to closer. And so, of course, you fill this page up with multiple frames, and you do the same thing for however many pages I ask for in the homework section. And that's about it. Again, don't worry if you make mistakes on this. If you're having any trouble at all, and even if you're not, it's probably a good idea to move on to the 250 box challenge after you've completed this. But of course, as always, since this is the last exercise in this lesson, make sure that you get someone to critique your work, whether that's on the subreddit or on the Discord server. Have someone else look at it. Don't just work in a bubble. I know that sometimes it can be a little bit intimidating to have someone else look at your work, but if you've done this right at all, you've probably put in many, many, many hours of work into this. So it's worthwhile to make sure that you've been going about it correctly. And if you haven't, that's perfectly okay, as long as you get someone else to point it out to you and that you know how to move forwards better and more efficiently and more effectively. So that's about it. I'll call this quits now. I hope that all the lesson video or exercise videos have helped clarify some points. As always, they are meant to be companions to the full lesson, so don't use these as an excuse not to read through all that material. And also make sure that you at least go through the instructions, the written instructions, every time before you're about to start the work, because otherwise, I mean, we're forgetful. We're only human. So we're going to make those mistakes. We're going to forget key pieces of information, and we don't want to end up wasting our time doing things wrong or doing things incorrectly. So come back to the videos, come back to the written instructions, refresh your memory frequently.